días a todos. Muchas gracias una vez más.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again, and thank you for being part of this webinar cycle. Today, we have the last Ask Me Anything session of the year. We will be talking about the 2022 roadmap with Eugenio Garcia, José Lamas, and Arin Bachmann. We have simultaneous interpretation into English and Portuguese for this webinar. So if you want to choose that option, you need to click on the interpretation icon in the bottom part of the screen and choose your language. We will work as usual. We'll have a presentation by the speakers on the topic before, and then we will have the usual Q&A session. So do open up your microphones, turn on your cameras, and feel free to ask any questions that you may have. So without further ado, the speakers are with you. Armin, go ahead. Thank you, Anibal. Thanks to all for being part of this webinar, in particular this Ask Me Anything session, in which you will be the protagonists in some way, thanks to the questions that you may be asking us. Eugenio, Jose, and myself are product managers. We are in charge of the consistent evolution of the different GeneXus products and the different components in GeneXus and products around GeneXus. So far, since the GeneXus Live event up till now, we have shown you different videos and webinars, and even though we were talking about the future, we were mainly focused on the present and everything that you can get today with the GeneXus version that you have available today. But to give this year a closing, we want to talk about the future, what's coming up in 2022. So what will we be focusing on in GeneXus? We will not make a presentation on everything, but we just want to introduce some of the main key points for innovation that we are visualizing for next year and on which we will be working throughout 2022. So let's start with that brief presentation, as Anibal just said, and then surely we can move on to the Q&A session. Or maybe you have any needs that you would like us to take a look at and for us to take it into account for the 2022 roadmap. So this is also very important for you in terms of how interactive it can get. We can hear from you. We can take notes of things that can be improved. So let's start with the GeneXus core. A very important thing in terms of the front end, we want to give out of the box with GeneXus that with GeneXus you can get a new design system. When you get GeneXus today, depending on the division that you're getting, you may have Carmine or GeneXus with Fiori. Maybe if you work with any of our partners, you may also have some of our partners' design systems, but we want you to get with GeneXus also out of the box this new design system called Unanimo. When I say design system, I mean this in the broadest sense. Of course, it is based on the design system object that we have implemented this year in GeneXus. But truth be told, it's a design system in a broader way. It's on top of the module that contains the design system object, all the additional components, images, files, user controls, stencils that will allow you to build solutions in a much faster way based on this interface, or at least that you can base them on this design system. Also, we will be working a lot on, and this is really looking into the future. We believe that this is a key point of our evolution here, as it represents a huge opportunity for us as an ecosystem. We're talking about super apps. We will be the first low code in the world to build super apps. We have, on the one hand, the technology necessary to build super apps, and you will be able to build super apps with GeneXus. You will be able to generate your own super apps using GeneXus, and also you will be able to include that technology in existing applications. GeneXus will also allow you to build your mini apps. So this is a new solutions architecture, a new technology that will allow you to build this, and we are visualizing that in the future, all ecosystems will have their super apps, and this is a critical point for you to be able to build this using GeneXus. So that was the second point. Now, specifically for you to build solutions for China, for instance, whether it's inside China or from the outside to China, we will also have a low code generator for mini programs that is integrated in WeChat. WeChat is one of the biggest super apps in the world. It has millions of mini apps within, and with GeneXus, you will be able to build those mini apps so that they can be part of WeChat. For those of you that don't know about China, in China it's more important to make an application run on WeChat than on a browser, for example. So this is a fundamental point if you want to be integrated with the Chinese market, or if you have businesses with China, for that matter. So now moving to the backend part, we will keep on working on architecture evolution. You know that the fastest thing to build when you have to start building something is, well, to do it as a monolith. But you also know that that architecture also has to evolve, or will certainly evolve as the business requires it, to other architectures. We want to make it easier for you to evolve those architectures, and also for everything related to the creation of systems and subsystems from one or multiple knowledge bases. In terms of architecture, we will also work on end solution, final solution scalability. In the same way that we integrate external components to a system that perhaps required a lot of scalability, such as, for example, the vaccination system in Uruguay with Amazon's API gateway, and also DynamoDB's API gateway. We want to have these technologies modeled within GeneXus so that you can add a DynamoDB as another data store or a message queue, or that you can deploy on the API gateway. So we're working on this, and soon we will have some news in this sense in our beta channel. So this is another point that we will be working on. And now, Eugenio, the floor is yours. Eugenio will be telling you about security issues and other issues as well. Thank you, Armin. In the security team, we have worked on a lot of things this year, and thinking about next year, what I did was to, if you can move on to the next slide, Armin, that I selected the most critical points. Basically, this is in line with what Armin said in terms of the unanimous design system. Our goal is that all the GAM back office can work with that design system. So if you want to build a KB, you can activate GAM, both what you're generating in your application as well as GAM's back office, and that everything looks consistent and seamless. The idea is for it to be customizable. So through the design system object in your database, you will be able to affect how this will look like in the GAM's back office. And along the same lines of trying to improve the back office, it's not just the UI part, but we also have some fun new features and changes in the UX of how we want this back office to look like. We have collected a lot of feedback from all our users, and we want to take advantage of this transition and this change and apply those improvements. For example, you know, multi-language support in GAM backend is an important feature. And another thing that we are working on, and we're waiting for the first quarter of next year for it to be completed, is the one-time password and two-factor authentication for mobile in this case. And on top of that, the time-based support, the one-day password, so that you can use the, you can use Google's Authenticator application, Microsoft Authenticator's application, and many others to request the token to the user that's going to log in if you want to have another authentication factor on top of the password. Another important element is that permits should be an object in the KB. That means adding more knowledge to our knowledge bases. And this is going to allow us to, for instance, have references of who is using a certain permit in the KB, among other things. And we are also looking at improving the whole deployment process in terms of permit management. We will keep on working on the security scanner tool that was released this year, integrated in GeneXus. That is the solution that we have to run static analyses on the code that we produce in GeneXus, the very code that you write in GeneXus. And well, another thing that we are working on, but also hopefully will be updated next year, is the OWASP top 10. I think that the 2021 version was updated in November. So this year we did a lot of, we had to work a lot with our GAM applications, and also along these lines, we will keep on working. And of course, always referring or taking as a guideline OWASP standards. So these are the biggest things, if I may, in terms of security. Now we can move on to the next item, Armin, which is a workflow, BPM. This is, again, aligned with Unanimo. We want the whole GX Flow interface to follow this new design system. We are also taking advantage of this opportunity to improve the UX in terms of task management and processes management. We're working on this. And so the first months of next year, hopefully, we will begin to show this to the community. Another key point is, well, the image that you see on the screen is the process modeler in web. That goes together with another important goal for us, which is the GeneXus platform on the web, of which Jose will be telling you a bit more in a couple of minutes. So we're just trying to polish this. We just need to do some more work with some dialogues and particular property management. We already have compatibility between this and the one that we have in our current ID window, so you can work with both. And if you're working through, for example, a GX server, you will be able to edit a process diagram both in the Windows ID and the web ID. Then, in terms of another thing that we want to do is to add the support for services task. This is a task in workflow processes that will not call an internal GeneXus object of our KB, but will model or call a web or REST service, whatever is the protocol. And basically, it will give you the chance to model that, and also to have a scheme that allows you to get back on your feet after you get any errors when you're communicating with a service. Another important part in terms of document management, we manage that in our GX Flow very database, and we want to take that to cloud storage if possible with Amazon, for instance. And we have a new standard for these that was, this is about the BPMN standards. It's in decision management notation, this DMN. This is what will allow us to provide a user, a non-technical user, with the possibility to make decision-making tables, if kind of rules. So if this happens, this should happen. It's, let's say, a higher level language to express rules that, well, we intend to do some further research on this and see how we can develop a business rules engine, and that this can be integrated so that I can use it in my diagram to assess conditions. And probably not only in diagram, but also we can integrate it in any of the GeneXus, in any part of the GeneXus logic. So this is a tool that provides a non-technical user the possibility to dynamically change business rules. Another aspect, also thinking about the web GeneXus platform, is to having a no code for BPM, so that, for instance, I can model a process and associate a dynamic form for each with each task. We already have this in GXFlow, and we want to make it simpler on the web. So let's move on to the next item. In terms of reporting, we incorporated maps this year. Again, now we are working so that all the aesthetics of graphs and maps controls follow the follow unanimous design system. In terms of GeneXus Web, we're working on query and dashboard editor for GeneXus Web. And also an underlying goal is that these editors that we're working on in GeneXus Web will turn out to be the same ones that we will include in Windows IDE. So in a way, we will be giving our users the same experience in terms of the editors, regardless of whether you're working on the web or on Windows IDE. So that is a bit more long-term, but it's very interesting. Another important point that I think will help us to make the use of queries grow in our data, in our knowledge bases, is that they can be used programmatically. So in the same way that you can use the result of a data provider in a for-in, that you can do the same thing with a result from a query. So we will be boosting charts. We had great feedback this year on this point. We have some really new cool types of graphs and charts that we will incorporate. The same thing applies to the dashboards and also the export in Pivot. So all the feedback that we collected this year, we want to make it be seen in our product. Now I'm handing the microphone over to Jose, and he will be telling us a bit about GeneXus platform. Thank you, Eugenio. So everything that Armin and and Eugenio showed us means that we have a wide array of products and services in GeneXus in terms of the development and the life cycle of the applications that we develop. So when we talk about GeneXus platform, we're talking about the vision of a unified, integrated access to all the products and services in the GeneXus platform and to the applications that are developed in GeneXus. So by unifying this access, we will be having a more global view of all development processes for applications to manage them and operate them. In the same way that in GeneXus, you can manage everything related to the development of a certain KB, the idea is that here you will be able to manage all the projects with their own respective KBs that could be in different GX servers. You will also be able to see and manage and operate with integration pipelines and deploy pipelines with the applications up and running, with user handling. So the idea is that from here, you will be able to take a look at the life of each project. You will create the projects from this in a way that once the project is created, you can start working on it, developing it, and you can do that with the standard GeneXus IDE, or if you don't want to leave this browser, you can use GeneXus Web. And from any of these, you will be able to work on that project. But the idea is that in this GeneXus platform, you will define integration pipelines. You will create environments where you can deploy your applications or run tests and so on. So as I said, one of the key players here, sorry, if you can just go back there. I said that one of the key players in this vision is GeneXus itself. In particular, this option of having a web GeneXus. And this is going to make it much easier to the developer of each project, but also for when you have, for example, a joint development or when someone needs to see the content of a certain KB. So there are huge advantages in this regard, as Armin and Eugenio said. And from each of the products, we are working really hard to complement and complete this GeneXus Web and integrate all the things from GX Server that are not integrated in GX Server, or the deploy functionalities and so on. And now, Armin, yes, next slide, please. I was telling you that the idea of GeneXus platform is that it unifies multiple tasks associated to the life cycle of each application. This is what you can see in the top part of the screen. So it's different activities that you can access through a unified platform that is the central part of the screen called GeneXus platform. And then below, it will orchestrate and connect a number of products and services that are the ones that you know beforehand, right? So as I said, this would allow us to create a new project, and that implies creating a KB publishing in a certain GeneXus server. You have an action that is triggered and directly run on the GeneXus platform. And once you have that project, you can start developing it. And for that, you can use traditional GeneXus, or you can use GeneXus Web. You will be able to define automatic build processes. You will be able to run tests, or even to catalog environments or machines or services on which to deploy the applications. That could be, for example, for a concept test or for pre-production environments, or of course, it goes without saying, production environments themselves. So from that perspective, in each of our products, we will also be working with these processes as part of a main target. For example, in GX test, the main goals of this year are about providing better data support in terms of data mocking or test data management, with the general improvements in the UX and the modeling language of our tests, but also everything related to DevOps processes and continuous development processes. So in GeneXus and in Cloud Engine, we will also be working a lot trying to extend and improve the deploy architecture support and platforms and technologies and modeling in particular. And above all, we want to bring the same simple modeling experience to development to the modeling of execution environments and the operation with these environments from GeneXus. So, well, this is basically a summary of GeneXus platform on which we will be working a lot this year. Okay, thank you, Jose, Eugenio. And in terms of these functionalities and when they will be released, we want to keep on working along the same lines that we've worked so far, that has given us really good results. So we will keep on releasing upgrades every 2 months. And this will take us, hopefully, to a GeneXus, to an 18th version of GeneXus by October 2020. So in terms of production lines in GeneXus, we will follow the same road. We will have a beta line that you can get every day, a preview line of the upcoming upgrade that is soon to be released, so that you can give it a try, and it will have more stability than the beta line. And of course, the release is every 2 months. So this is as much as we wanted to tell you about the innovation roadmap. And below, you have some further detail on some small features that we will be adding to the different components in GeneXus. So, well, so far, what we had to say, this is just a for you to have a better idea of maybe something that you may need, or any questions or anything that you think is worth considering for next year. So Anibal, he will be the moderator of the Q&A session. The floor is all yours. And well, feel free to ask questions. Okay, Armin, thank you very much. Armin, Jose, Eugenio. We have the main people of each team, and you have the chance to ask them any questions that you have. So please take advantage of it. You can ask anything to Armin, Eugenio, or Jose. So the microphones are open.
Vale, yo tengo una que me hicieron llegar acá mientras.
Okay, I do have some questions that I received before. I think that we have a question on the chat. Yes, Mauricio. Mauricio Valverde is asking us, good morning. When are you expecting to have the microservices part available? Okay, with GeneXus, you can build microservices. So maybe your question, Mauricio, is more about that slide that I showed you of DynamoDB and how to deploy on serverless environments. That has several components. The DynamoDB part, I think that in the next couple of weeks, we will have a beta version of this. We are done with the implementation stage. We're running some internal tests before giving it to the beta testers. We also need to validate that it works in other, machines, not only the environment of development. So yeah, definitely in the next couple of weeks in beta. Then once DynamoDB is stabilized, we'll move on to CosmoDB for Azure. So we will have it for both clouds, and then we will move to some non-SQL stuff for on-premises environments. But considering that we were aiming at an unlimited scalability, and for that you not only need technology but also infrastructure, and clouds are the best place in this sense, we decided to start with those that are recommended and promoted by big clouds. That is in terms of storage. The other point is deploy to API gateways, right? The deployment of these services to the API gateways. We're talking about function deployments and also the environments that operate between the function and act as an interface with the users. So in GeneXus 17 upgrade 7 that we are releasing, you will have deploy from .NET 5 to API management environments of Azure, and also in Java, from Java to, you will deploy to Amazon Lambda, and we will keep on working on that so that it's available in Amazon's API gateway. So as a matter of fact, you can already deploy them on the API gateway, and the work that is yet to be done is, well, making it a bit more complete. For example, that you can publish backend services or applications for smart devices that also have GAM. So all the Ford components that they work in an integrated fashion without the need to make any extra configuration in those environments. So the baseline technology is almost ready. Some components are already up and running, and some others we're still working on that. So that's something that will be coming out in the next couple of months. And as it is completed, we will also release it with the different upgrades. Great. I have Alejandro Rinaldi. He's raising his hand. Rinaldi, go ahead. Thank you. Eugenio talked about some business rules to include in the BPMNs. What's going to be the difference between the procedures used by BPMN? If you can give me perhaps some more insights on this. Yeah, well, basically it will be the same people that defined the BPMN standard. They will also, they've also had for not so long ago this new decision management that is called a notation. And basically what you do is you have an Excel spreadsheet where you have certain conditions, and with these conditions, what is the output or the results that you expect? So that basically gives you a much higher level language that any business user can modify or express conditions. And that is the user side of things. Then, of course, the rule engine will have to interpret that based on the data that will be given it to it to assess those conditions, and it will return a result, an output. So we will implement a rule engine based on those standards, and the result or the output of those rules will be integrated in, for example, in a diagram in a gateway. as we are contextualizing that as an independent module, that could even be integrated in your GeneXus logics. For instance, if I give you an API through the engine that will allow you to assess certain rules with the data that you need to assess these rules, then you could be using it in your own logic. So this is a no-code tool in a way, because the end user is not going to be doing any programming. They're just going to be declaring conditions and establishing outputs. I don't know if I was clear enough, Alejandro. Decision management notation was what you said? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I took note of that to just Google it a bit more. I have a question on BPM on the chat. Alan Fuentes from Mexico is asking us for BPM, the implementation of business rules with DPM. I am guessing that it's more focused on the end user, so that without depending on the IT area, they can change the rules themselves. Yes, it's correct. It's exactly that. That is the goal. That you will make it higher level so that non-technical users can use this, and they can also do this dynamically once you have the system up and running and you have some conditions that are assessed to determine the flow of things, that you can also dynamically change that from this. Yeah, excellent. Oh, we had another question that I didn't see. It says, will we have web servers available, such as, for example, GraphQL? Okay, so this year we were trying to work on REST APIs, on making REST APIs more complete, giving them more stability and trying to give response to that kind of project. Next year, we want to provide support to gRPC, which is another protocol that is also supported by the API object. And in terms of GraphQL, it's on the radar. It's a possibility that the API object will be exposed as a GraphQL, but we're working on ideas that are coming to try to solve in a GeneXus way what GraphQL wants to solve for the world that works and programs by hand, or more manually, let's say. A higher level solution, if someone wants to consume a service, the idea is that they can describe the data that they need as part of their solution, because they are consuming the data to come up with a solution. So data are needed, and that anyone can describe this data, and based on that description by the data consumer, we can generate these services to give a solution to that consumer. So these are ideas around technologies that use some underlying technologies such as GX query. So I would say that the answer to your question is that we have some higher level ideas than GraphQL, which doesn't mean that we will not work on that, but we try to do some other stuff. It's not something that I can promise right now. Yeah, as a matter of fact, Armin, I didn't mention this in the reporting part, but a line of research that we have for next year is how to exploit through the queries that you define in your KB so that it has a GraphQL interface. These are some lines that are yet to be explored. We need to let the idea sink in and see what makes sense. Excellent. Enrique Almeida says, Eugenio named talked about dynamic forms for the workflow. Can you tell us about the roadmap with dynamic forms? Yeah, we already have a dynamic form module, and we want to implement this module on the one hand, the execution part, so that it's easier for you to customize it later, integrate it with the design system object, and also to simplify it. I think that we have a lot of metadata that ultimately, makes things blurrier rather than clearer. And so thinking of this in terms of scenarios in which just by defining a form, you can you can dynamically resolve workflows. And the goal of this is, well, thinking about GeneXus platform, as Jose said, if you think about the platform, you will be able to, you will enable different features or functionality. So, for instance, you want to use DPM with dynamic forms. So you will have that look and feel where you can model a process and you will associate a form to each task, which is done dynamically without having to generate any code in between. That is basically the goal that we have in the long term in this regard. I don't know, Enrique, if I've answered your question. Good. In the meantime, we have another question. Will GeneXus have any improvements in the IDE to support slint, template strings, and have a validation of syntax of our objects in a smarter way without having to specify the object to know what is wrong? We want to work on modernizing language, yes. We want to also make current language more coherent so that it's easier to learn, even by new developers. In terms of this validation, the way that you phrased it, well, we haven't really talked about this, or at least I haven't. But we are thinking for next year a lot of innovative ideas in terms of IDE and interface to do it even in the web IDE first, to play around a bit there and see how we do, and then to transport that to the Win IDE. So Alexander, I'm taking note of your question. I will talk to the guys in the technology department, and then we will see what can be done about it. Yeah, there are some things that we are researching in this sense. Our low-level implementation of these things that were mentioned, especially looking at trying to develop things like what you said. This is still in its early stages of research, so we can't really talk about a plan, but it's in the radar, definitely. Yes, also another thing that I would like to add, the dashboard and query editors, we want, as they get more mature, we want to make some improvements, and we want to use that in Windows IDE. So, for example, the web process modulator, it is so good that we also want to take that to the Windows IDE. So a lot of innovation that we will be doing in the editors that are now being done in GeneXus Web. Well, you know that technology nowadays allows us to use that same editor within the very Windows IDE. For example, that is the dashboard editor today, which is it's a browser, or you know, the chatbot reader is a browser within it. Okay, we have Francisco Subishana. He is saying, good morning. I would like to ask you about the Hyperledger blockchain. Okay, so we did some research on that. We've had the blockchain generation for a while in beta so that you can write a for each, and this will generate different integration components with Hyperledger. The architecture component is not online, the one that will allow you to prototype this. And we are working to have that component available online, but not on any technology, but rather specifically on Amazon Web Services technology. Amazon Web Services has a Hyperledger service. So we want you to be able to try the blockchain technology directly against a blockchain environment that is built on Amazon. And we wanted to have this up and running for the end of this year, but probably it would be available in the first quarter of next year. And of course, in parallel to all the research that we are conducting, we are open to hearing about real projects that you would like to tell us about, so that these prototypes can go beyond prototypes and that they can be in production. There can be systems in production, and they can be generated from GeneXus, to try to see how we can add value from GeneXus with our tool for that kind of project. Okay, Giovanni Jimenez is asking us, PDF type reports. Have you thought about making it a bit more dynamic? That is, that you can dynamize the use of print blocks, for example? Well, in the reporting team, what we've thought about is, rather than working with reporting with print blocks, to boost all the PDF export aspects, and therefore, the printing of the dashboard and query controls. Something that I think I didn't tell you about, and it's definitely in our radar, is let's say that nowadays you can send queries or data providers to your dashboards. You can also add tables or images or text blocks. So practically, the dashboard would be a sort of, I don't want to say any web panel, but it has a lot of elements that will allow you to customize it to a great extent in a very flexible way. And at the same time, this comes together with the design system aspect. And one of the things that we want to include there is a web component, so that you can put in a web component, you can put it in a dashboard. So on top of pivots and graphs, you can have a web component if you want to model it. And that at the same time, the dashboard will have a way to be exported as a whole to PDF. So all that visualization can be exported. That is the road that we want to go down. Great. I have another question that says, the front-end generator, will it generate for React with a native React? Yeah, the question is when. Yeah, the question is when. We are working now in trying to complete the Angular generator. There's a lot of work in terms of that generator and the modernization of the current web generator. These are the main lines. In the Ask Me Anything session on that point of front-end generation, Alejandro Silva told you a bit more in detail about our ideas for that, but our priority at the moment is focused on that Angular point, and then we will try to see to what extent we work with other generators, with the technology that we have at that time, right? Because there is also a lot of revolution in the web. There are some frameworks that are growing, some others that are falling behind, and we need to be really careful in terms of which we adopt. But this new Angular generator is built on a technology that is completely different in the way that it generates code. For example, WeChat, this mini program WeChat generator, in a way is a branch, or we can say that it shares a lot of code, even though it's not the same. It shares a lot of code with the Angular generator. So these new generation technologies allow us to be much faster in terms of creating new generators, and also in terms of the fact that those people that make these new generators do not necessarily need to be, it doesn't have to be us, but you need to delve into code generation technologies. So it's a very select group, the audience that will be interested in creating new generators, but we're also interested and open to talking about these new projects and initiatives in this sense. Okay, very good. We have a piece of code by Luis Miyashita, and he says, can you configure the URL rewrite object so that the API object can have these endpoints? And then he wrote some of the endpoints that he is trying to get. Yes, it's called REST app. It's an annotation in the API object. That's the name, and in that way you will be able to configure the path of each of the services. This is not implemented yet, but it's one of those things that we are considering as a way of closing the API object, the functionality of exposing REST APIs. This is one of the points that we need to definitely work on in this sense. And that is definitely something that we are looking at in the first quarter of next year. It should be ready by then. Then Esteban Montenegro is asking us, Eugenio, in terms of the dashboard integration, how are you contemplated to integrate Microsoft's Power BI? Well, we haven't thought about that yet. I've been taking a look at Power BI, which I think has some really interesting visualization tools. But no, that is something that we need to do some further research on to see what we can do in terms of integration. If what we do can be seen in Excel through Power BI or the other way around, actually. But again, it's something that we haven't really discussed in depth. Okay, I have a question by Hector Aguilera. He says, have you got any plans to add Android AAR libraries to use them as external objects in smart devices? Well, I can really see Fernando Baniz's look on his face right now. If you want to say something. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about specifically, but you can already implement external objects in Android. What you have to do is your external object module. You need to import the AAR and use it. But I'm going to copy the link on the chat to an example. There's not using an AAR, but just implementing an external object. But it's basically you just need to extend that example. Okay, I have a couple of questions that I got by email that I don't want to leave behind. I have one by Jaime that says, what are the expectations to incorporate Figma or Adobe XD soon? Okay, Figma, we are working on it. Figma, yeah, that's coming up next. And when we're done with that, probably we will move on to the other one. But yeah, Figma is clearly coming first, which has grown a lot in terms of the designers community, and we're working on it. Okay, I have another one by Virginia that says, can you tell us a bit about the Angular generator? Do we have a roadmap for that? Sorry, can you say that again? Yeah. What do you know about the Angular generator's roadmap? Yeah, in the Angular generator, we focused mainly first on projects or applications that are already running on smart devices that they can also run on the Angular generator, so that you can have these applications that are native apps can become progressive web applications. That is that they can reach a much wider public. So if you want to get more public, the native mobile application, you know that it's not so good. The native mobile application is really good if you want to gain a user's loyalty, but a web application is the best if you want to reach a lot of people and reach masses, big masses. So the Angular generator is an additional component that is relevant to achieve those greater levels of adoption. That was the main focus, but now we don't want to have these applications just up and running, but also that any front-end application or a landing page or a front office application in general, for example, online stores, that they can also work on the Angular generator, regardless of the size of the screen. If it's a small, mid-sized or large screen, you can do it with your Angular generator. Remember that you're going to program that from panels. And in our roadmap, we have the idea to complete the different functionalities to provide support to these applications and to these projects that are coming up. If you have any Angular projects, do reach us, and we will also help you in terms of assessing whether or not the Angular generator is the best idea for that scenario that you're trying to cover. There are some scenarios in which the Angular generator is still not ideal, not the best option, surely. So with each project, we can help you to assess the scenario and tell you what the best idea is, because there are some features that are still not covered but we do want to cover in the future. For instance, validations derived from transaction rules and so on, automatic generation of these parts, so that later the Angular generator, as well as any other web generator, can also help you with all your back office application that are so common in GeneXus. So like in summary, in terms of the scope, it's what I said. And in terms of actions, please do come to us, do reach us, and we're glad to provide any support that is needed in terms of diagnosing and later on in developing the project in terms of the best technology. Great. I have two questions by Mauricio Ronchi. When will Unanimo be available in the IDE? When we're migrating from GeneXus Evo 3 to 17, and we would like to include it. Okay, so the first thing that we do in GeneXus is to enable some components that Unanimo requires. Unanimo is being developed on the beta version of GeneXus, and it has some files and images that are modularized because Unanimo wants to, we want to distribute it as a module. So the fact that images and files can be modularized is a functionality that will definitely be in GeneXus 17 upgrade 8, sorry. So we're talking about late February next year. And also in production environments, it's very plausible that for some projects, you will be able to use Unanimo. But throughout next year, we will be working on some final details of Unanimo, adding some other components and support to different application parts, as Eugenio was telling you today. We will have, for example, mobile support, reporting support, flow, GAM, that everything, all of this can be out of the box with GeneXus, that you wouldn't be getting this with Unanimo at the moment. So that is going to be a progressive rollout to enable different scenarios, but also Unanimo is open source, which means that you will be able to see how Unanimo was developed, and you can get inspired to copy. Yeah, why not copy? Because it's an open source license to create your own design systems inspired by all of this and all the learnings and all the lessons learned. You can get the best of all the things that we learned as a result of developing by ourselves a design system on other GeneXus's objects and user controls and so on. Okay, the second question that we have by Mauricio is about chatbots. What is the roadmap in terms of chatbots? So, for example, incorporating geolocation captures, images, documents. Are you thinking about incorporating Signal? Yeah, that was about chatbots, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we integrate with one of the suppliers that we are integrated with, and is in the documentation, allows you to do all the multimedia integration for multimedia interactions through the different means. That is not something that you have with the default provider that we give you. That won't give you the multimedia option, but the other one does. So I should take a look at the reference. Maybe we can talk about this after the presentation. If you just Mauricio sent me a message, I can give you some further details about that.
Yeah, Giovanni Jimenez.
Okay, Giovanni Jimenez is asking about the possibility to incorporate messaging broker of RabbitMQ. It's in the radar, not in the roadmap. Okay, so we took a look at this. We're not focused on that, or it's not a priority at the moment. So depending on the projects that may come up, it's something that we could consider. In general, integration happens through you know, you can use an external library for any project that can be easily integrated. So yeah, it can be done. We can do it, or you can do it yourselves. Okay, very good. Enrique Almeida is asking us the following question. Jose talked about machine provisioning with GeneXus premises. What is the roadmap on this? Will it be able to update machines of a work group such as GXWin or GXWeb? When are the new upgrades coming up? When are the patterns or UCs coming up? Yeah, when I talked about that, I didn't really mean that. I was thinking about a different level in this case. So in terms of GeneXus Web, there is a you know, GeneXus Web works on the browser against the backend that we do the machine provisioning, in which you have everything about GeneXus, and that affects the updates of those backends with the corresponding versions. But your question, I think, is a bit more about machines, right? With, for example, GeneXus Windows. That is a bit more complex. It's actually simpler and more complex at the same time, because we could easily build, you know, machines with a GeneXus Win installed and to give you that. But what's complicated is that that is going to be a remote desktop access. So you will have direct access to everything. And so it will be hard for us to ensure that you can do an automatic update, for example. So the more freedoms you have, you know, it's good on the one hand, but worse on the other, or more complicated on the other. It would be easy to have new machines with new versions, but yeah, it could also be complex. Another aspect of this provisioning aspect, and it's related to different GeneXus versions, is about build. And we're also thinking about having a building service in which you can have direct integration pipelines. That is why we're also thinking about, depending on the pipeline, you know, provisioning with machines that have GeneXus of a certain version, or a Java generator of a certain version, and so on. And last, we have the provisioning aspect in terms of applications, and we want to work on that. This is mainly what I talked about. So when that you can eventually catalog your own resources and services with which you can connect, or that we can provide you with. For example, you say, well, in this application, I want to set up a concept test environment, and that in the very platform, you can say, okay, I want to work with a machine or a service from a certain place, and that you could do it. So hiring is one option, or configuring it in terms of where it would be pointing at, so that these pipelines can work with different machines depending on the different scenarios that they may have. We don't have any specific dates for your question, but yeah, it's part of all the things that we are working on and all the things that we would like to improve and work on in 2022. Okay, Giovanni Jimenez is asking us, apart from Sketch, what other design programs are you thinking about integrating? You said something. Yeah, Figma. Great. Drew Darby from the States is asking us, any plans to expand the support team? Okay, Drew. So yeah, I'm going to speak in Spanish because we have an interpreter. We can take a look at this with Gustavo Carriquiri. He is the support manager, and maybe we can see in what regions this will expand, and what is the roadmap in this sense by the support team. But Drew, do send an email, or otherwise I can reach you later, and I can, you know, send you an email myself. Okay, Giovanni is asking us, is Unanimo thought for having the same potential as WWP and or K2B? Well, Unanimo is a general purpose design system. We want it to be the baseline of many of your projects. And we have and it has a lot of block builds, let's say, for the construction of its system, some basic blocks on which you will be able to build. That is beyond its pattern, right? So in terms of potential, it does not compete with WWP or K2B. So as I said, it's a general purpose design system. And we will add, for example, to the pattern, some general functionalities that can be good for as many projects as possible, and that they can constitute the basis for you to build new screens based on that design system, and that it can be an inspiration for further design systems. But that is not the goal in itself. Okay, Adrian, Dennis is asking us, are you thinking about any advancements in terms of the module server in Nexus? The Nexus module server? Yeah, maybe some of you know it as a knowledge matrix. And those module servers, the next thing that's coming up is that you will be able to share design systems through that knowledge matrix. As a matter of fact, Unanimo is going to be distributed through GeneXus. When we'll be able to package UI in packaged modules? Well, we don't know when. The answer is, I don't know. You improved your questions, eh? Well, okay, I have one by Gerardo, and that is about security. What about the Log4j vulnerability that came up last weekend? Is that something to worry about? Well, this vulnerability is in an open source component that is very used in terms of Java applications for everything about writing server level logs, for example, HTTP requests that you get in your server. That is the vulnerability. Those hards that are just a couple that have this vulnerability are distributed clearly in GeneXus. We already published some news on this because there is a mitigation process for this, because the vulnerability is not in the GeneXus generated code. Basically, it's in these packages. Yeah. So what we are doing now is we are updating it so that upgrade 7 that is soon to be released will come up with these updates, and we're also publishing information on how to mitigate this. Of course, the easiest way to do it is to update those hards in production environments, which doesn't mean that that is a vulnerability that you have. It depends on some conditions that need to come about for you to actually be exposed. But yeah, it was something that kept us busy this week. And what I can tell you is that from GeneXus, we have already updated all the components and already published information for you to mitigate regardless of what we release now. Okay, last question by Giovanni. Have you thought about updating user controls that are found in Marketplace? And as in many cases, they're not compatible with the new GeneXus versions. Yes, we've thought about it. We know that we need to update Marketplace in a way, maybe even refound it. It's requiring some big changes in terms of what it accepts and its model in itself. So yes, it's a pending issue. We haven't really started working on that. Okay, very good. We've exceeded our time, so we have no more questions. I have nothing left to do but to thank Armin, Jose, and Eugenio, and all of you for participating. It was our last Ask Me Anything session in 2022. So thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Remember that this will be posted on GeneXus/ webinars, so you can see this webinar and all of the ones that we had so far. Thank you so much, and see you in 2022. Happy New Year. Bye.